Yes.
Brilliant.
I'll send it on Google Drive as soon as we finish. You should get it a couple of minutes after.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so again, thanks for agreeing to chat. So I guess I'll tell you a little bit about the series as
Yeah,
well.
okay.
Um, so it's called Paranormal. It's the third series. I'm not sure if you'll have seen the last two. They are on BBC iPlayer, broadcast on BBC Three. It's presented by the Radio 1 DJ Shana Larry, and the premise of it is that she investigates a paranormal cold case for each series. So the first series we did a haunted house. Um, Last series we did alien and UFO sightings in West Wales back in the 70s, which there were a lot of.
Ringing a
Um,
bell. I think I have seen. I think it's in saw the haunted house one anyway.
yeah, yeah. And then
Oh,
so this series is all about the spirit medium Helen Duncan, who was the last woman to go to prison under a 18th century witchcraft act in 1944. And so we're kind of investigating her life, her apparent powers, and then as we're looking into that sort of historical timeline, Sean is also meeting with contemporary mediums, so people who say that they're psychics today, all the different ways that that's practiced. And a big part of it is that she meets people from sort of all areas of the paranormal belief spectrum. So she meets like enthusiasts, people who do believe they're genuinely psychic. And then she's also speaking to scientists, psychologists, experts. And so I was doing some research and I came across your book on Amazon. And I just thought it would be really interesting to talk to you, given that you have a background sort of in psychics, and then you came out and wrote a book about all the sort of tricks that are used. So
well,
yeah,
in
if
fairness, that book only scrapes the surface. Because I've got another book, the one that you mentioned on the email,
mm,
Confessions of a Celebrity Psychic. In more recent years, I've released a book called Psychic Secrets of Alex Leroy,
mhm,
which is basically a step-by-step manual of how I ended up filling civic halls and theatres in the northwest of England in the very early 90s, sort of 1990, 91, 92
mm,
era, when I was managed by a guy called Nathan Demdike, who used to work with Doris Stokes, the spiritualist
mhm.
medium, who actually taught me how to do the contacting the dead bullshit.
Wow,
And Psychic News at the time dubbed me as the new year Uri Geller and Doris Stokes rolled into one.
amazing.
Some of those
This-
press cuttings are on my site, magicalguru.co.uk. So if we were to do anything to camera, in post production, they could edit in on screen Psychic News press cuttings showing
Yeah,
that I had the genuine world of spiritualism, believing that I was the next red hot
red.
talent of the world.
Yeah, this is so interesting. So, what made you kind of step away from that and profess that it was tricks, I guess? And what was your, I've got so many questions. Like, I guess I'd like to ask how, what your experience as a psychic was like, and then what made you decide to step away from that?
Okay, I'll tell you what. I give you a brief. If I'd been asked the question, how did he get into it all? I'll give you a longer than it would be as an answer for television, obviously,
Mhm.
because I know that's short, sweet sound bites. But just so that you've got something to go off, and then if there's anything I haven't answered, by all means, feel free to ask anything
Yeah,
then.
yeah, just tell me
So
everything. Tell
the
me everything.
short long version is, and this is all able to be documented proof if you need it for like cutaways or things going across the screen or any whatever format you take. I was born on the 13th of August 1975 into a show business family whilst my parents were travelling on Gandhi Circus here in England. From a performance point of view, I started performing at age 3 and a bit as Flap the Clown, Britain Jungie's paid circus clown, which was again documented in the national newspapers. So as these on magicalguru.co.uk, there's images of me in the clown stuff. You can make it visual and funky from a TV point of view. My dad didn't just, well, he was a circus clown, but also he did what they call a fakir. Didn't swear, Fakir, fakir, yogi style art, which is like lying on beds of nails, going up ladders of daggers, fire eating, that kind of stuff, which all looks incredibly dangerous. And there are some dangers in it. However, there are tricks of the trade, so to speak, as there is with a lot of things on the circus. So things that can look like they're relatively safe, bizarrely, can often be some of the most dangerous things. And the things that look really, really dangerous, although some of them genuinely are deadly, some of them are actually, as long as you've got the right equipment, nowhere near as dangerous as it looks. It's kind of inverted quite a lot. And I grew up in this environment, so the way we view the world as human beings comes down to the way we're brought up, the way we're nurtured. I'm not going to get into that whole nature or nurture argument, but we're definitely products of our environment, and my environment was one of trickery, albeit one with positive intent to entertain the general public. And one of the seasons early on, my dad took a summer off from the circus, and we ended up on the Golden Mile in Blackpool when I was about 4.5, 5. And we were working on the Golden Mile on the front of a thing that was called the Paul Daniels Magic Museum. Paul Daniels was just he was just rising to prominence at that point. And this businessman had approached him. So they had like a sideshow, an exhibition where they had video screens showing him performing. He wasn't there himself. But then there was exhibits and these optical illusions you could interact with. So they could cash in on his rising fame, as it were. And I was on the front with my dad. I was dressed as Little Flap the Clown. My dad as Titty the Clown. And we had one of these neck guillotine things where you apparently make a big blade go through somebody's neck. And we were doing that on the front because it got a crowd, an edge, as they call it, as carnival folk call it, carny, which in his historical terms, going back, carny, as in fairground and circus, do have historical links to, in the industry, the term is duckers, which it's the internal term. It's a traveller's talk for fortune teller, basically. But that would also encompass me, whatever, whether it was a tea leaf reader, tarot reader, psychic medium, whatever. The sort of historically there are links. Now, I did that and I got interested in magic. So all the money I was earning, I was spending on magic tricks. So I was performing as a clown, but as I grew up doing that performing, I was also becoming very proficient at magic, Paul Daniels style magic. That is not MAGICK witchcraft magic. Although at a later stage, I did have a delve into that, but no, we're just in normal conjuring magic at the minute.
Great.
And there was a company called Magic Books by Post in Bristol, no longer there. Shut down about 8-9 years ago, but I started getting their catalogue and buying books and learning stuff from there. And I saw this book, and it said The Art of Cold Reading. Didn't have a flipping clue what the heck that was. So I'll buy it. Bought it, and it turned out to be one of the many methods used by apparent psychics to convince people that they can tell them their past, their present, their future, and whatnot. And it was about the time I got that book, which I was probably watching sort of 10, that I started dabbling with this stuff, and I got some tarot cards, and I thought, play around with it all. Wasn't sure if I particularly believed it or not, because obviously I had these books saying it was bullshit. But then again, on the same token, I picked up books in normal shops, as it were, on the high street, saying that, oh, it's real and this is what you've got to do. So it was a bit confusing. However, I was having to play around with it, and my grandmother, my dad's mum, decided to inform me that her Auntie Ellen, E-L-L-E-N, Ellen, I can never pronounce it right, was a tea leaf reader during the war.
Right.
And I was like, what? Yeah, she said, oh yeah, people will come with the rations and give her bits of the rations, and they pay her that way for tea leaf readings. So yeah, it's like something genetic, why I've just a weird coincidence or what, that I've been drawn to this. And she always relates the tale that they were listening to on the wireless, as she referred to it, to the launch of the Titanic. And that before it set off, apparently, and I've heard this from my grandmother and from other uncles before they passed away, apparently she turned around and said, "We'll never see it again."
Mm.
And then, as we know, it went on and crashed. Now, I just heard that, and as is sadly the case with so many apparent miracles, paranormal feats, experiences, you only ever get to hear about them in an anecdotal manner from other people. Whereas really, you know, in the real world, don't believe anything unless you've seen it with your own eyes and truly experienced it yourself. And even then, question it, because there could be a rational explanation. Our brains play tricks on us. As I learned, as I also, from that same catalogue, acquired books on hypnosis, which is how I got into that side of things as well, which is what I still do to this day. But the tarot reading wise, by the time I was about 13, I felt really confident doing it. And I went to a psychic fair that came into town, and I just asked to see the person who was in charge. And this lady came over and saw me. I looked younger than I was. And I said, "Look, I'm a tarot reader." And I think she probably was laughing internally, thinking, what nonsense. And she turned around and she said, "Go on then, give me a tarot reading," because I was saying, "Let me have a table and stuff." So I sat her down and I did a reading, and she was gobsmacked and went, "Do you want to join?" sort of thing. So from that point on, every Saturday and Sunday, sometimes bank holiday Mondays, sometimes during the holidays, but when the psychic fairs was on, I was doing tarot reading, runestone reading, palmistry, and weaving into that my apparent clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient skills. Clairaudient being to hear things from beyond, clairsentient to feel things, clairvoyant to see things, apparently. And then this is where I met the Nathan Dendyke guy who'd worked with Doris Stokes, who was there was Doris Stokes, and then who followed on from her, a woman called Doris Collins. And they were like the figureheads of the Spiritualist National Union in England, which is, I suppose, kindly we'd say a club, but more accurately, it's sort of a cult. I mean, it has got religious status. They are classed as church, spiritualist church, which is laughable, given that under the Consumer Protection Act in recent years, it has become law that any demonstrations of clairvoyance, bearing in mind that a spiritualist medium can be a member of a spiritualist church, which is legally defined as being a religion, even though it's bullshit. If they do a public demonstration and advertise it, the Consumer Protection Act now states that they have to put on it that there is no proof of what they do, the jury's out, and that it's for entertainment purposes only.
Yeah.
Well, hang on. If it's a bona fide religion and it's genuine what they do, why the hell do we need the Consumer Protection Act to make people... it's because there's way too much evidence that's complete and utter nonsense. Not least of which comes from the original founders of the spiritualist movement, the Fox sisters, who ultimately confessed to having started a religion off through the hysteria of them just having this ability to crack their toes and other body joints to create noises that sounded like spirits rapping from the other side. So it's madness. So yeah, he said, "Oh, a few of us are doing Middleton Civic Hall in Middleton in a couple of weeks' time, and one of the clairvoyants has dropped out. Do you fancy taking part?" And I'd very quickly realised doing the psychic fair circuit that there's a few different types of psychics, clairvoyants, spiritualists, call them what you will. There is and it doesn't matter whether male or female, there is the type who swear blind that what they do is genuine, but they are complete and utter frauds. And were you able to get them connected to a lie detector, they would fail miserably, but they would never actually admit that what they did was fake. And in fact, they would come up with every excuse under the sun. A prime example is the late Colin Fry. Before he was known as Colin Fry, he worked under the name Lincoln. I don't know if you've come across this information before, but if you haven't, this is all very easily, you can double check this on Google. I'm not libeling anybody. This is documented fact that you'd be legally able to actually include in a program. He worked under the name Lincoln, and somebody who was suspicious of what he did, because he was at the time under the name Lincoln doing what they call physical mediumship, which is akin to some of the stuff that Helen Duncan did. Manifestations, ectoplasm, things moving around, spirit trumpets making noises, etc., etc. The standard kit bag, as it were. He was doing all this, and everyone was sat down and joined hands and all that. So everyone's holding each other's wrists, meaning that the circle can't be broken, and therefore everyone knows nobody can be touching anything or moving the spirit trumpet. But somebody came from the outside who wanted to expose him and turned the light on. And when they turned the light on, there is, who we later know as Colin Fry, stood on the middle of the table, waving things around. And this then got reported in Psychic News and in the Spiritualist National Union, and he was exiled from the community, albeit that he wasn't gone very long, and then he changed his hair colour and his name to Colin Fry, and later became a highly well-known spirit medium, who, when you investigate, had all the audience members in the studio fill out questionnaires before they attended, so that he already knew about who their loved ones were that were dead and had all the information required. Again, it's farcical. So I said, yeah, and he taught me the basics of cold reading, hot reading, and the other tricks that they use from the apparently getting communication with the spirit world. I ended up doing those shows for a number of years, and during that time I also, and I have done since, although at the time I was claiming it to be genuine, okay? For a few years I claimed it to be genuine, and then in the very late 90s, it was circa around the year 2000, almost, I said, look, it's all nonsense. This is how it's done. Yes, there's type number one, going back to what I was saying. Then there's type number two, who will swear blind that what they do is genuine. And if connected to a lie detector, would probably pass it. And it would show them telling the truth. But this doesn't mean that what they're doing is genuine psychic phenomenon. That comes down to definition. It means that they've been brainwashed and conditioned to believe what they're doing is spirit communication. Now, spiritualist churches have things that they call development circles. I prefer to call them gentle brainwashing sessions over a number of weeks that teach people in a coded, covert manner some of the techniques of cold reading, hot reading, in a manner where they don't even realize they're being taught trickery. So they end up doing things thinking that they're getting intuition from potential spirit communication, where in actual fact, they've just been taught techniques that then end up through the practice, the development circle, become automatic, so that they're not consciously aware that they're using these techniques, so they're actually deluding themselves as well as other people. Then you get the class of people that swear blind, that what they do is genuine, but when there's no members of the public around, and if you've been working on their psychic fair or in their industry for enough that you seem credible to them, that you're in it, you know, not to cause trouble, they will let their mask down and start talking about, oh, I hear you're in such an area next week at such a theatre, say, or such a psychic fair. Without fail, you always get somebody from this particular family show up because the son was brutally murdered in a knife attack, and they give you this info, and there's a sharing of information goes on, because there's people that do get addicted to alleged messages from spirit, because it gives them some sort of comfort, which is the argument that these spirit mediums that get exposed tend to use. Oh, well, it gives people comfort. Well,
yeah,
combine to that a little bit, unfortunately, when you then are getting people dependent on coming back for more messages and spending more money, or coming and seeing you privately and taking more money. If you were going, oh, message from spirit world, I'm getting this. I'm getting William coming through. Does that make sense to you, Pastor? It's almost as though he was here today, gone to. It was like that, as quick as that, and there's a tightening around the chest. Would this make sense to you, my love? Yeah. Okay. Well, what he wants me to tell you is, you spend way too much time worrying if he's all right. He said it's a much better place where he's gone to. If he went down the route of kind of empowering people to have closure, as a grief counsellor would, to be able to say goodbye, and then in itself was encouraging them not to come back for further messages, then I could kind of buy into that. It's a relatively cheap form of psychotherapy, but sadly that isn't what they're doing. And I saw this firsthand, and by the point I turned around and said it's all nonsense, I'd experienced all these different. Well, and then there's the out and out charlatans who, frankly, practically almost, if they were confronted and you asked them if they were genuine, some of them would turn around and go, "Who gives a shit?" And they literally don't care, because you can. For those who believe, no explanation is necessary. For those who do not, none will suffice, as the American mentalist and mind reader Joseph Dunninger once said. And so it's true with any form of religion. When you get into spiritualism, which is a religion, once people's beliefs, they believe something, or they're hanging on to the fact that they might communicate with a loved one from spirit, and emotions are involved, it's a dodgy area. And into that comes the offshoots of, people go on ghost hunts and paranormal hunts, and there's this theory, well, ghosts, what they are is like an electromagnetic energy, vibrational energy of the person who's not fully left us, but we can't see them because a physical body's been burnt or buried. Their spirit within has gone to this extra realm, and science is now showing us that what we see as human beings, which is true, what we see as human beings is only a very small band of light, ultraviolet light, other lights we can't see, and yet they do exist. In the same way as if you have a radio in your living room, there's one radio only, and sometimes when you tune it in, you get one station then interferes with another, because they're on very close bandwidths, but until you get it tuned into the right bandwidth, you can't hear it clearly. And yet that one radio can pick up hundreds of radio stations. Well, that's true, but then they'll psychobabble that logic as, well, it's the same. We can't see them because they're gone, but when you tune in, or maybe some of their frequency is still there, and that's why you get the classic ghost apparitions. It's bullshit. It's playing on people. It's taking something that's logical and founded in science and turning it into pseudoscience, psychobabble. And yeah, I was involved also in running ghost hunts and paranormal investigations, and it's bullshit. The vast majority of the people in the industry fall into the sorry, and there's a final category. The vast majority of them fall into, in my experience, the fraudsters. They may have started out with good intentions, but they end up using every trick in the book, because when they're doing it to make a living, results count. Who, when they get to know you, will admit such. When you're in the same field as it was. And then there's one final category, and that's the category who, they may start off with good intentions. It doesn't matter. They start off with the good intentions, or they start off learning trickery. But in any event, at some point, the trickery takes over. because they get better results and more accurate.
Mm.
But then, because they start, like anything, you get a kind of instinct for doing things. Because they've done it so often, they stop having to consciously think about using the techniques, and it becomes an automatic thing that they do. And then they start to convince themselves, hang on, I wasn't going through the process I used to, but yet I'm getting this accuracy. So they start to convince themselves that they must have started making real connections, and they come to believe that they've actually got some special power when they haven't. All they've got is proficiency at doing the trickery to such a level that they consciously become unaware of the fact that they're doing it. So yeah, what led me to stop faking it? I mean, I have since those times run ghost hunts, but said that I was there as the person who was going to create an entertaining element of it. And we have somebody here who claims to be a genuine spiritualist medium, and I've employed somebody. A bit harder to find than you'd think, because I was making it clear that I was going to play Mr. Skeptic. And did it that way. So I've kind of done both sides. I stopped at a show that I did that took place literally a week after my mum's dad, my granddad on that side, had died from cancer.
I'm so sorry.
When I'm on stage doing all this walking around bit, and then I'm getting a sense of a feeling I'm drawn to this side of the audience, and I'm pointing to somebody, and we can go into what the trickery is involved later if you want. But and I turn and look this way, and I see something in the corner of my eye. So I look to the wings, the side of the stage, and I see my grandfather, who's dead. I finished that show, and I vowed that I would not do contacting the dead shows again. My view on that's changed a bit since. I would do, but it would be from the point of view of making it clear this was a demonstration of how the frauds duplicate it.
Right, yeah.
I obviously know that I did not see my grandfather. I was still in understandable grief at the time. The mind plays tricks. And that was just something that my brain conjured up. It's fully easily explained through grief, the state of mind, blah, blah, blah. Because I am damn sure that were it possible to actually make oneself known from the other side in that manner, that having done it once, it will become easier. And I'm damn certain that my grandfather, who was very supportive of my quest to be in the performing arena in whatever form, would have made life easier for me by coming through and actually saying something to me and going, we can take this show on the road, kid. We can do this for real. Didn't happen. So that pretty much convinces me even further that none of them can genuinely do this. And there's very easy ways to prove that they can. You can book if you can get them to agree to certain restrictions under test conditions, what they claim to be able to do falls apart. As my late friend James Randi, who ran the Committee for Scientific Investigation, the claims of the paranormal. Got photos of me with him again if you wanted visuals. Proved on many occasions, because he offered up $1 million prize to anyone who could prove any psychic, paranormal, or related activity under quite reasonable conditions. It wasn't like, it was things that if you're genuine, you should be able to do. It might, there were mediums who said they'd sense things off feeling an object, so-called psychometry, and one of them did do James Randi's test, and what he did was he got 5 items like a hammer, a saw, and whatnot that had been bought brand new from the
Mm.
shop, and he got one item from a museum that looked new, it had been kept clean, but had been used for many brutal murders. Now, if the psychic's able to pick up on energy in the manner that they claimed, the item used for many brutal murders compared to items that are brand new straight from the factory should be a piece of piss for them, really.
Mm.
Failed miserably.
Right, yeah.
It's very easy to prove that it's all bullshit. And so I took a step back and at that time, and when I thought about it, I thought, you know what? There's people here who I'm seeing them show up at shows again and again, or they
Mm.
go week after week to spiritualist churches, and whilst it's free to get in, unless they have a special guest night where
Mm.
a big name medium comes along, then they might have to pay 15 quid or something. Generally speaking, it's free to get in at the spiritualist church, but they do a collection, and obviously, as with religion, tithing, giving, they're encouraged. The more you give, the more you believe, like the evangelical preachers and Benny Hinn. Which, when I was on the psychic fairs, I got approached by an American guy who'd seen me do it. I did a demonstration. They did talks and stuff, and I agreed to do a talk. If I did a little demo, I'd get more people coming for readings after. So this is where I broke in doing my hypnosis stuff and mind reading, but presented it as genuine psychic, metal bending and whatnot. I got approached by an American guy who said that his boss was looking for a warm-up act for these, as he referred to them, rallies that he did in America, and that they would pay me to go to America, obscene amounts of money. And it sounded to me too good to be true. And obviously I fobbed it off and never got back to the person. And then a few years later, I was at someone's house who had Sky TV, and the God channel was on. And on came Benny Hinn, the evangelical preacher. And they showed bits of him backstage. And this guy who'd approached me was backstage with Benny Hinn. I was actually, little did I'd probably ended up working that circuit. I was dangerously close to being. It's a world that when you get into at that level, it's difficult to get out of, because there are tens, if not hundreds, of millions of dollars involved. This is organized crime at the top end of the industry. At the lower end, it might be a fun tarot reading at a party that gives people, the girls or lads get together for a night. A psychic reader comes round, and amongst that, they might get a message from the other side. Fairly innocent, okay. But then as you progress up the ladder to spiritualist church dependency, but it's a bit of my ethical side kicked in, and it's like, no, this is exploitation. And when you look back on what some of people like Helen Duncan, just one example. I mean, the only thing that's really notable about her, no offense intended towards her, but is that she was the last woman tried under the Witchcraft Act. In terms of the tricks or the tool bag she used, it's pretty much the same that had been used for years by everybody else. Cheesecloth as ectoplasm. Christ, sometimes rubber gloves connected to cheesecloth to try and look like hands. Cut out pictures from newspapers of people's faces for manifest dolls' faces attached to. I mean, you look at some of the pictures, and they're out there, dead easy to find on the net of her, and you look, you go, how could anybody find this at all believable? But people who've lost a loved one, if they're still grieving, and you've heightened that emotional hope that they might get contact, for those who believe no explanation is necessary, for those who do not, none will suffice. And spiritualism and so-called ectoplasm and whatnot is a prime example of that. I mean, she was confronted, they wanted to x-ray her, skeptics, and she refused. They wanted her to drink this kind of blue dye because they believed that she swallowed the cheesecloth and then regurgitated it. So if she'd swallowed the dye, that would have exposed that. She refused. Well, if you're genuine, why would you refuse? Now, I'm not sure off the top of my head if Helen Duncan ever did agree to proper tests, or I'm getting them mixed up with somebody else, but I know there were a number of spirit mediums, female spirit mediums of the time, because they were male as well, but female ones, that did agree to a drink said die eventually, or to have other tests done, who would actually then, to prove that there was nothing concealed in their clothing either, because they quite often went into spirit cabinets that were closed, because they had to get out the cheesecloth, put it in position or whatever, and then their accomplice would open the curtain, and there they are sat there with the cloth and the bloody doll's mask or whatever. And often this was concealed in there because they had, you know, the old style long flowing dresses in pockets in dresses, or maybe in pockets in the curtains of the spirit cabinet, or in some houses where they had seances and people came to them, there would be people hidden in the walls, so that, you know, there's apparently nothing there, but they set up the spirit cabinet in full view, but that's fine because someone could then come out of the wall behind and pass things through. Or it did happen at some occasions, and there are graphic pictures available. Women would stuff the cheesecloth inside themselves, so that they can prove definitely it's not. No, it's, and also they could be fully naked, which they did on some occasion. But still, you ended up with your ridiculous doll's head cloth, or it's just ridiculous. Frankly, looking at it now, it's ridiculous. These days, were I to go back into that arena in a dishonest manner, which I wouldn't, but were I to, the device is available now. I mean, for Christ, you can get this normal size mobile phone, but probably a quarter size of that. So not much bigger than a matchbox. You can get little projector units now, little beamers. Imagine in the middle of it, you can have things project on walls. You can. There's so much technology to scare the crap out of people or to comfort them, and yet, despite that, you still get people going week after week to spiritualist churches to hear somebody apparently give them messages from the other side, and yet this person from the other side who knew them when they were alive keeps getting things wrong. Obviously it's the medium's fault. I'm sorry, you know, because I'm just like a television aerial trying to tune in, and sometimes we get that interference. So, you know, it's not that they're saying it wrong. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing. That frequency gets interference. Yeah, okay, right, yeah. No. You just throwing stuff out there and knowing that human beings, as much as we don't want to necessarily admit it, are all essentially the same. The crude way of saying that is we all piss and shit the same, whether you're royalty or a peasant, or in between. And there are certain things that motivate us or interest us. So there is a mnemonic, Mr. Cheat, M-R, Mr. Cheat, C-H-E-A-T, which stands for money, relationships, career, health, education, ambition, travel. It's a mnemonic, a memory part of things to talk about that one or more of them will interest all people at some time. Or the other one is the scam, T-H-E, the scam. Travel, health, education, sex, career, ambition, money. But you scale it down even further. All that people are really interested in is themselves. Everyone is selfish, even if they won't admit it. They'll go, well, no, but I do all this stuff for other people. Yeah, but you do it if you get down to proper brass tacks, because it makes you feel better about yourself. There's no such thing as being completely selfless. So things that you talk about the person, things that affect them, and that will generally so wealth, money, material possessions on the one level, or emotional feelings, interactions, friendships, relationships, sex on another level, or the world we live in, most people, that will then also be what are they achieving? What sense of achievement or worth do they feel in terms of their career or sports they may play or whatnot. There are very few basic emotional motivational triggers, and mediums and psychics know this, and that is what they are manipulating and playing around with, and what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I realized, you know what, I don't like doing this anymore. It's wrong.
Yeah.
I'll use those techniques in a different way, a more honest way,
Mm.
which is you pushing those same emotional buttons, but with telling people that that's being done
Saying it's
with
fake.
their
Yeah.
consent and cooperation to help them through a ritualistic process that's called hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
But a lot of the buttons being pushed are the same buttons, just in a
Yeah.
different manner with different intent.
Yeah.
That kind of encapsulates my journey, as it were.
So interesting. Yeah, because I've not spoken to anyone who has that sort of background and did that sort of shift into something completely different. Yeah, like you said, it would be really interesting to hear like the techniques that psychics use. We've kind of looked into a bit of cold reading and hot reading, but if you could just explain how people do those and
Yeah, I mean,
how it
the
works.
short version, or the version that's, I could go in. I mean, I've got books galore on this, so it could,
Yeah.
you can
I might
make.
just have to grab my charger because my laptop battery is running
Okay,
out.
yeah,
So I'll
yeah,
just
do that. Yeah,
2 seconds. Yeah, I'll be
no
back.
worries.
Just 1 second.
All right.
Sorry about that.
That's
My
okay.
laptop battery drained so quickly. I thought I'd charge it up this morning, but then it's just flashing up again now that it's dying, and I don't
Oh,
want
that'll be the paranormal nature of this conversation,
they're
draining the magnetic
draining.
energy.
Yeah, they're
Yeah, yeah,
draining
of
the
course it is.
energy. But yeah, so it would be great to hear about how those
Yeah,
techniques
so
work.
I'm going to say a brief overview. It can be made even briefer than this for the need for sound bites, TV wise.
Mm,
Don't really, I'm aware of that. But cold reading
mm,
is the idea of telling people stuff about themselves that they perceive you couldn't possibly know,
mm,
but meeting them cold, hence it's called cold reading. So you've not had any time to do any research. And what it's down to is probabilities and observation.
mhm,
And certainties. Now, the certainties element I've just actually spoken about. It's
mm.
the fact of certain things interest people. The
Yeah,
scam, Mr.
yeah.
Cheat. The fact that all human beings at heart, whether they'll admit it or not, is another matter, but at heart, to function properly in the world without manifesting habits, addictions, fears, phobias, or negative stuff, stress, anger, and all that, a human being needs to feel loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued. If there is any lacking or imbalance in one or more of those areas of their daily life, it will have a knock-on effect on one or more of their self-confidence, self-image, self-esteem, or self-control, aka willpower. Any imbalance there will have a knock-on effect on their self-love, self-worth, self-respect, positive selfishness. And by that I mean, like being on the plane, you might think it's selfish as a mother to put your oxygen mask on first, but actually it's the wise thing to do, because otherwise you could pass out and not be able to save your kids. So sometimes you're
Mm,
going to be
mm,
selfish to be selfless. Any imbalance there can have a knock-on effect on the person's sense of self, their self-identity, or as Freud would call it, their ID, the id,
mm,
the ego being the conscious mind. And these are things as a therapist you can use to help people. Could you understand that if they've got a habit, addiction, fear, or phobia,
mm,
it's because there's an imbalance in one or more of those things. From a mediumistic, psychic, call it what you will, point of view, cold reading wise, you know that the fact the person has come
mm.
to make a connection with a loved one in spirit, or has come wanting to know about their past, present, what the future may hold, that they've got an issue, a worry, or a concern. Otherwise, they would not be there, would they? They just won't be spending money on it all the time. So you know there is an imbalance in one or more of those areas. So you know they are more likely to accept and agree, whether it's true or not, it's irrelevant. They are more likely to accept and agree, and sometimes delude themselves to things being true when they're not, things that you say to them that make them feel like there is hope for the future, that things can and will get better. And a good hypnotist will do this, uses suggestion in their work to help people change their lives. A good psychic would say things in a manner that allows the individual in front of them to fill in some blanks for themselves. So when they walk away, they'll go and tell other people that psychic said X, Y, Z to them, where in truth, they didn't. That's just the meaning they gave to it. So, you know, I might say to you, Evie, I'm getting a sense, I don't know why, it's not really not making that much sense to me right now. I've got to be honest, because it's a bit clouded, and I think that's probably because there's still some emotional intensity attached to this experience that happened. So I've got to apologize in advance. I don't want to say anything to upset you. That's not my intention. What I'm feeling is that I need to bring this through to share with you so that it can kind of release you from what's been holding you back, what's been locking you in place, and kind of making you doubt yourself. Having moments in your life, I'm getting this sense that there's been moments in your life when you thought, am I really worthy of this? Do I deserve this? Where you've doubted whether you really have that skill, talent, or ability. And I feel that I don't know exactly what this means, so, but I'm being told that it wasn't your fault. And then they're saying to me, it's time to let go, move forward. You weren't to blame. And the word they're saying to me, and I'm just getting this sense that when I say this, on the one hand, it's going to be a little, potentially a bit upsetting, but at the same time, it could be that moment that's a signpost to you that, yeah, I can finally let go and move forward. And they're saying, it wasn't your fault. Just, it's time to let go of the abuse. Does that make sense?
No.
No, I just want to, right, I know you're looking a little bit confused here, but no, right, just to clarify, I wish they'd said this first, but I don't mean, yeah, right, but I didn't know what, so I couldn't say it could. When I say abuse, people jump to thinking sexual abuse. No. They're just saying, it's like, why didn't you bloody say that before then? I'm being told that by abuse, they mean more like bullying that continued over a period of time. That's why they just shortened it to abuse. Does that make sense? It's like being a block being chipped away at and making you start to doubt yourself. Yeah. I mean, I'll stop there. The fact is, I could have gone down so many roads till you end up genuinely being able to relate it in your life.
Yeah.
And then when you walk away later, you would end up telling people that this psychic turned around and said, told me about this time, you know, it was at school when I got bullied, or it could have been in the workplace. I didn't say where, but I never said where this happened. Now, that is the abuse principle. Because well, you can watch the video back, because I was trying to do the acting a bit. It's a long while since I've done it, but I think pretty consistent with the shit you may have seen. The word abuse will tend to conjure up sexual abuse or physical abuse, but the way I did it means that if you'd ever been sexually abused or physically abused, you would know that. You would never need to have verbalized it, but your reaction would be, how the fuck's this person picked up on that from that worker? That's what your brain would latch onto. And I'd see that in your body language. That's the observation part. Now, as you were starting to go, no, it doesn't make sense, I could see in your body language anyway that, no, it wasn't. Okay? Which is why I go, oh, no. and backtrack, but in a way where it's coming through clearer now. We've already set up this get out of jail. I'm just telling you it as it comes through.
Yeah.
No, what they mean by abuse, it's like it felt like that, but it was more bullying over a period of time.
Yeah.
So we've taken it down a level.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people on this planet, either whether it was in the workplace, in a past relationship, at school, have some experience where they can link it and go, oh, they must be referring to that. We've all got some experience in life where we ended up feeling perhaps not as worthy or, you know, criticized or attacked. So we as a human being, especially if we've taken the time to go and visit a spiritualist medium or spiritualist church, and even more so if we paid money for the service, because that's logically saying we believe in it. Otherwise, why would we waste money? Are going to look for something that will fit to make it fit. So the cold reading part of the job is to throw things out that may seem severe. But imagine if I'd said abuse and you'd been sexually abused. You'd be like, how the frigging hell could I possibly ever have known that? And I'd immediately see with your body language that you were reacting to that. And I've got, but the way I did it was, I'm not saying ethical, but it's more ethical than a lot of them would do, because I've already set it up psychologically with the suggestion that it's time to let go of this. This is being brought through as a sign and a signal that you're not to blame. It wasn't your fault, which are lots of things that survivors carry around. So I've applied, in the example I'm giving here, counselling skills and stuff that sadly a lot of the people in the psychic arena don't have a clue about, and can often end up doing more harm than good. But, so there's observation, there's certainties of what fits most people, and saying things in a manner that praises people. You know, oh, I'm being told that, you know, you're really wonderful and creative. People like to be praised. It's very rare they're going to go, no, that's totally wrong. But even if they do, you can go, well, they must be telling me that you've got potential that you just haven't tapped yet. This must be a sign to let that potential within you come to the forefront that you've been holding back. You can always twist things, which is one of the things of cold reading. Or when it comes to mediumship, if you go out there and you're coming out with messages, they're either going to say yes. And bearing in mind that most human beings have very similar lives and interests, it's quite possible. And also certain age groups and generations. We know that people who lived in the 60s had certain experiences compared to those in the 70s and 80s. So if we know roughly the age of the individual they're wanting to connect with in spirit world, and we've done our research and perhaps read books like Passages by Gail Shehay, which tells you about it's Passages by Gail Shehay, the crises of childhood to adulthood or something. It'll come up on Google, Passages. It tells you what most people experience emotionally and psychologically at different ages of their life, whether they're male or female and whatever. And although this is generalized and stereotypes, in this context, it gives you very valuable stuff to use to apparently be being told stuff from the other side, because there is, you know, there's the Office of National Statistics now have a website. Years ago, there wasn't stuff online, so it's even becoming easier these days. Because this kind of goes over into hot reading now. The Office of National Statistics have information on deaths each year and each decade for geographic areas. So if you're going into a certain geographic area to a spiritualist church, you can very easily look up, like last year, what was the highest percentage of deaths. You can look up the obituaries in the local newspaper for the past year. See what's coming up, the anniversary of certain people's deaths when you're doing your appearance, because quite often around the anniversary of people's deaths, people will go to spiritualist churches or readers. You can find out people who've died in the past few months who are likely to still be grieving, who are likely to show up. So you've got information that you can throw out there into the congregation, the audience, that's likely to hit, because it's all out there. But back in the day, before the internet, they would have advanced people. So Helen Duncan wouldn't have shown up and done it herself. She would have had someone who worked as part of an inner core group who would have gone to the local graveyard and looked at gravestones and seen whose anniversaries were coming up or what family name, because of the 6 degrees of separation or whatever, the chances are somebody connected to the family who knows somebody will be in that room, in that geographic area. And so you will have an apparent massive hit, but in truth, you've just done a bit of research on gravestones or gone to the local newspaper archive and looked at the obituaries column. That's a big thing with hot reading as it was. This day and age, bloody hell. No, one of the other tricks was that seances, whether public performances or as they are now in theatres or back then in stately homes and stuff, wealthy people would have them and invite people. Obviously, the richer people maybe got the better seating because they pay more to be there. But quite often with the public demonstrations, it was kind of, there was no assigned seating. It was first come, first served. And that was because, generally speaking, the person more desperate to receive a message from the spirit world would show up way earlier so they could get a seat to be seen. Meaning that they'd either recently lost someone or it was coming up to an anniversary. So they were more likely to connect with the stuff, the research that you'd done. It's now even easier because people, the majority, there's some differences. There are some mediums that give their demonstrations, they would say, in theatres, and they have a team of people who find out stuff as people are entering the theatre, listening in conversations. One individual in particular has or used to have a big plastic fishbowl and have people write things down on cards. These were like love messages, them fold in half and put in the bowl, which they apparently never touched during the show. But yet one of their individuals who'd gone around collecting them could quite easily have taken a handful, taken them backstage and be reading them out to somebody having an earpiece. Now, I'm not saying that Psychic Sally does stuff like that. But Derek Okora from the spirit world is telling me that she does. To try and fucking sue him. And Colin Fry saying, yep, she definitely does. And then there is the people who do demonstrations where they do not assign your seats to you, because with her you can book your seats. Some of them it's literally you buy a ticket, first come, first served. And again, it's about getting there. You're more likely if you're at the front, but also they will, rather than using the venues with a theatre, you have to use their booking site. But if you go to, these spiritualist church events, I'm not saying that this gentleman is a fraud, but there's a spiritualist medium called Stephen Holbrook. And when he does his demonstrations, whether they're in a spiritualist church or a community centre, you have to book your tickets through his website. Lovely jubbly. That means that when you pay, he's got your name and he's got your address and email address. Of somebody's name and email address in less than 10 minutes, I can find out things that would scare the living crap out of them in a manner that's completely legal. I'm not about breaking any laws. Just with so many social media platforms, if you know what to look for and how to look for it. And I have it's not a print edition book, but I have a package of materials called Private Medium's Secret Notebooks that magic companies sell to people around the world. And in there, I teach the best ways of getting information like somebody's name and, because their shopping cart they've set up, they can even ask for someone's date of birth. If you've got their date of birth, you know how old they are, if they're likely to have relatives alive or dead. Using social media is the new hot reading. You can find out anything and everything. And you can even do this in real time. If you've not done it in advance of the show, if you've got a team with you, it's quite possible to, I'm getting a connection with this person. Can you stand up? Can we stand up so we can see you? So somebody take her a microphone, or I'm a microphone in the audience, giving time for, and quite often these days, modern ones will have a handheld camera, somebody, so it goes on the screen behind them on the stage. It just looks like it's theatrics. No, that gives the person at the side of the stage a bloody big look at what this person's like as well. And so they can recognise because when you get the name out of them and family name through your verbal interaction with them, they can quickly type it in a laptop. But obviously there could be loads of people with that name. That's why he needs to see them easily from the wings to be able to make sure which one it is, to then be able to find info to either write down and hold up at the side so only you can see it, or to say into the earpiece that you've got. They're just some of the myriad of things that go on.
Amazing. Thank you so much for explaining that all. It's so fascinating to hear like how people buy into it. And I guess, yeah, how grief really impacts the way people take these messages on and believe them. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk me through it all. I've got to dash off now. But yeah, it was amazing to talk to you. Thank you so much. And I've got your email address. I think you sent me your mobile number as well.
Indeed, yeah.
Great. And yeah, I'll be in touch soon. So thank you so much again. Pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, as I say, I'm, you know, from an actual visually point of view, I can have spoons bend and snap on screen.
Amazing.
I can. Oh yeah, I mean, I'll leave you with this last thing. One of the techniques that I still use, but I tell people that it's trickery. I just don't tell them what the trick is. But I will sometimes, from a party, people are talking about these subjects. Let's all sit down around the table, and you go, look, everyone. I want you to take your left hand and hold on to the wrist of the right hand of the person next to you. So I'm being a bit, you know, grab hold, and let's make the circle. Good. Don't break it. Oh, actually, just a minute, and then I get them to let go. I go, we need to turn the lights out. So turn the lights out, sit down and go, everyone connect. Is everyone connected? And everyone confirms they're connected in exactly the same manner. So when things start to crash off the table, or somebody feels like they've suddenly been tapped on the shoulder by spirit or whatever, and I go, release and turn the lights on, no one has a clue. And yet it's as simple as everyone sat round, everyone will, their left hand take hold of the person's right wrist. So apparently I will use my left hand to get hold of the person next to me's right wrist. And I do when the lights are on. But when I come back, when the lights are off, everyone takes their left hand to hold on to the right wrist. But when it comes to me, I wait till the person this side of me has got hold of this wrist. And then all I have to do is take this hand, move ever so slightly across and take hold of this person's wrist. And because it's in the dark, they believe I've got hold of them with my left wrist.
Right, yeah.
This person's got hold of my wrist but can't feel that other person. I've got a hand free to pick something up off the table or take something out of my jacket and throw it, or tap them on the shoulder, or take out of my pocket a car aerial and use my teeth to undo it, so that I can then reach over the table and touch the head of somebody across the table that you couldn't possibly reach with your arm. Then you can close the car aerial down, put it back in your pocket.
Yeah. So that's how seances.
Yeah. There's So I mean, there's things we could visually show if need be.
Amazing. This is just so interesting hearing all of the techniques, because like I'm familiar with them, but I've not spoken to people who actually have experience practicing them and implementing them. So it's so interesting to hear it all and hear about your experience.
And then there is the final technique, and very few people do this in this day and age, but some of them would have done years ago, because spiritualism was particularly popular in the Victorian age around the same time as what was called mesmerism then was, when there were public demonstrations. And that is to quite simply find a number of people who are highly suggestible, hypnotize them, and give them certain post-hypnotic suggestions to react in certain manners to certain non-verbal or verbal cues, and then just actually happen to have them there at your seance. And when you perhaps pick up your drink, they suddenly act like they're having some sort of spasmy fit and speak as though they're speaking in tongues in a weird voice, and then suddenly come out of it not having a clue what they've done or why they did it, because they doing a more dramatic version of being Elvis Presley when the music comes on, like at a stage hypnosis show. But in the context and environment it's presented in, it looks like they've suddenly become possessed by a spirit during the seance. So yeah, literally all things are possible.
They certainly are.
So I'll let this download from Zoom and I'll send it you on Google Drive link.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. You've got my email. Yeah, that would be perfect. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure to talk to you. Have a great day.
You too. Take care. Hope to speak to you soon.
Speak
Take care.
soon.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.